Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I have some special guests with me. This is my mother, Renee, and this is my dad, Mark.
Hi.
And then you guys know my husband,
What's up, guys?
Fernando. So, okay, today we have a really special podcast that we're going to be doing. We are going to be interviewing my parents, which, if you don't know, I grew up the first part of my childhood in Alaska, what they call the bush of Alaska. And so from when I was one or right under one, we lived in Alaska until I was almost 9 years old. So my parents have some amazing stories and just a really unique way of raising your family. And so we wanted to share that with you guys. And so you guys are in for a treat. So we're gonna, so let's get into it and we'll start asking you guys questions and you guys can tell us some fun stories about Alaska. So Fernando's gonna ask a few questions.
All right. So, for those of you that are just joining us, being a missionary is hard, and being a missionary, especially in cold weather, is even harder. And so, I'm going to start off by just saying, where were you missionaries at? Where were you? Yeah, where were you missionaries at?
In Northwest Alaska, in some in Fairbanks, but most in Kotzebue and Noorvik, which is a little village on the Kotzebue River, about 50 miles inside the Arctic Circle.
Nice. Now, how cold does it get there? For those that don't know about this, how cold can it get?
40 degrees below zero is not unusual. We have seen winters where it would drop to 40 and even 50 below and stay there for a month, not just for a few hours. And so at 50 below, the planes stop flying. I mean, it's pretty cold.
I remember one particular winter it got to about 80 below, and that was a very unusual time when they shut school down during that. But it just lasted.
Which that's
like
pretty rare for Alaska.
Very rare. At 40 below, the kids are still going out to play on recess.
That's insane.
After that, they stay inside for recess.
That's crazy. So where did you guys shop for food?
Usually we would, like if we had a trip into Fairbanks, we would go to Sam's Club. They have a Sam's Club in Fairbanks. We would go there and stock up, get cases of like canned vegetables. So occasionally we would get frozen because we were flying immediately into the bush so we could carry them in. We would get 50 pounds of flour, 50 pounds of sugar, like that, because we knew it'd be 6 months before we could get our staples again. Or if we couldn't make it out to Fairbanks, we would call a friend in Fairbanks and have them shop for us, and they would ship it to us via the postal service, which would use airplanes.
Yeah. And then for meat, I mean, I remember this. We always had a freezer full of meat.
Yes.
So how did you guys get the meat, Dad?
He got it.
Like any kind of a man does. You go out and hunt it down, you shoot it, and you gut it, and you dress it out on your kitchen table.
And I would have to help with that.
Yeah.
Once he got the meat in, put it on the table, and I'd have to help.
I have this vivid, memory of someone skinning, I think it was a caribou, and they were skinning the the hide from the meat, and I just remember them having a knife and they were just cutting, and it was kind of a white part. Mm-hmm. They were just cutting the fur or whatever off. But I like how it's like seared in my mind.
That was probably in Kotzebue because you were like 3.
You
guys would go outside and watch him.
Every winter, we would load up our boats with 55-gallon drums of gasoline, and we'd go up the Kotzebue River from Noorvik to the Onion Portage, way up river where the caribou would cross. And we'd set up camps, and we'd harvest our winter supply right before freeze up in the fall.
Like September.
Wonderful. great times hunting caribou with the Eskimos and some of our friends there. And a big shout out to all of our friends in Alaska that have lived there for a lifetime. We just lived there for a few short years. So if we misrepresent the truth, then you can
Let us know.
Correct us.
Comment below.
Can I say something
Yeah,
about
go for
the
it.
contest? Because a lot of people don't know what we're talking about. Just a real quick. I went to Bible college and seminary. We were a young married couple, just married a couple years. We had 2 baby girls, and then Faithy was born. She was just a little over 1 year. And after teaching for a short time in a Bible college in Indiana as a young couple, here we are with 3 little baby girls, and Renee was pregnant, and we moved to Alaska, felt the call to go to a village, and drove 5,000 miles and got on 2 bush planes and flew into Noorvik, Northwest Alaska. Oh man, when we landed, they thought I was missing because we came in a little late with Mark Vernon, and she was with Gary Dieter and Faith, and I had Priscilla. But when we finally got there and the snow was blowing, the 4-wheelers came out in the village, and we went into a little village, about 600 people. There's no way to express what it feels like to have left your family and friends, everything. You got one general store, a little tiny airport with small bush planes that fly in. There's no highway. You might as well be in a third world country. And I looked around, the snow was blowing, and I'm going, oh Lord. Your heart hits your gut. You say, what have I done? So I'm here to start a Bible school with the last yearly meeting, but I just can't leave. I spent the last dollar I had getting there by faith.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have left if I wanted to, Fernando.
Mm-hmm.
But it was awesome, but there was no McDonald's. There was nothing.
Yeah.
And,
Nothing that we were
and so
used to.
we're living in a village in the central part of where all these Eskimo villages are in Northwest Alaska with the Inupiat Eskimo. And our purpose is to establish a way to help train their pastors and leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thankful for that short little privilege. It changed us more than anyone else.
Yeah.
Just to know what it feels like to go. And if anyone ever says it's worth it, I say, just do it. Because it's a radical thing to just leave everything and just go, man. Don't you ever feel like saying, I just want to do something radical for God? When God called us to do that, we just did that. To us, it was no big deal, but looking back on it, not many people are willing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I ain't saying that to credit ourselves, because we have a lot of friends who've lived there, and it's been a lifestyle. But it wasn't a lifestyle for us, but it became one.
Yeah.
But we came in at the Lord level of living in a little, and we'll talk about that later. But anyway, I just wanted everybody to know what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I think that's where God meets you, is when you had no control. Like you said, you couldn't leave if you wanted to. It's like, God, you have to come and show up, or else we're screwed. But just something real quick. Something that I love about my dad the most is how faith-filled he is. And I think that's something that we inherited from you. And that I'm not super adventurous in many areas, but when it comes to believing God for something crazy, or if he's calling us to do something, my first response is always, yes, I want to go. And I got that from you. And I'm super grateful for that, Dad. Yeah, super crazy. So tell us a little bit about the living conditions when you guys moved there. So we got there off a bush plane. Mm-hmm. Then what? Where did we go?
Yeah, and by the way, this is so that people get a picture, and we're going to go into the ministry part in this in a bit, but it's just to kind of get people that have never even heard of Noorvik or Kotzebue to kind of understand the harsh environment that you were in on a practical level. And we'll talk about the ministry in a bit too, but just going off of that question again.
What are the living conditions?
So I'll give you my side
from
of it.
Mama.
And then a lot more. They picked us up on 4-wheelers with a sled behind to carry our stuff. And they took us to this little cabin. David and Sarah Miller, shout out to them. They let us live in their cabin. That was a very special place for them. It still is. And they allowed us to live there and gave up their summer home for us. And we were grateful for that. Little tiny cabin, no running water. It was basically a one room. There was a little bedroom and a bathroom, but we used honey buckets. We had a 5-gallon honey bucket. You put a black trash can in it, you pour some Lysol in it, and that was your toilet.
So a honey bucket is a homemade toilet.
It's
just a 5-gallon
bucket, and you buy the toilet seat to fit on top of it. But David had built a box around it. It was really not. It was nicer than other people had. We lived that way, and he just closed the lid, put a board over it to keep the smell down. You used a lot of Lysol. No running water, so I would heat my water on the stove to wash dishes, to wash my hair. Back then, my hair was, I could sit on
past
my hair.
Your knees, right?
No, I could sit on it though. Okay. And so I had to learn to do without running water. So it was. We heated with wood. We had electricity, which was great.
How did you guys bathe? Because I know you bathed us in a bucket.
tin tub. You had a tin tub. Mark eventually we sponge bath usually, but until Mark got from Cabela the shower thing, and then we could stand in the shower. You'd have to heat your water. I couldn't wash my hair in it because not enough water, but we could shower in it. So. That was the inside of the cabin, which where I was most of the time with 4 babies, 3 and under.
Oh yeah. Okay, so say the ages.
Okay, when we moved in, it was Hannah was 3, Priscilla was 2, Faithy was 1, and I was 5 or 6 months pregnant with Mark Jr. Oh my goodness. And so when Marky was born in January, we moved in September. In January, Marky was born, so I had a 3.5, 2.5, 1.5, and a newborn.
I can't even imagine.
3 in diapers. Hannah was the only one potty trained.
This goes to all your mothers out there.
Yeah.
Shout out to Super Mom.
She can do it
Renee.
in the bush of Alaska. We can do it
in Santa Barbara.
In Santa Barbara in the house with running water.
Hey guys, so we're back. If you can hear this, it sounds a little bit better because we had a little bit of a technical difficulty. So anyways, we're going into part 2. You won't even notice because it'll be connected, but we're going to continue to talk about their life in Alaska. And so the last question was...
Yeah, what was the living environment like? So Dad, you want to share a little bit of your experience?
Yeah, I was the one that had to... take the diapers to the dump. And that's kind of a running joke.
To the dump, to the dump, to the dump.
Yeah, that was what I think that was Mike and Bill Zabel and Jim Barefoot made fun of me because I got lost on one of my first trips to the dump. It was snowing and a whiteout, and it had several miles to Onick Lake, and where I dropped off all of our garbage, and it would sink in the lake the next spring. And the snow blizzard, I made a wrong turn, and it took me a couple hours to get back home. But I made it before Jim and Mike and Bill found me. And that was kind of a fun joke. You just can't imagine what it's living like in Alaska when, as far as you can see, it's nothing but snow. It's a winter wonderland on a snowmobile. And I hunted caribou for my family, not just for fun. With the Eskimos, they taught me all about that. And so it was fish and caribou. My schedule, I'd get up early and I'd do Bible school all morning, and in the afternoon I'd have to split firewood. I'd have to take my chainsaw, thermos coffee, and I'd drive for maybe an hour out of town to the nearest tree and cut the spruce trees and drag them down to a lake and get a load full and then bring them home and cut them and split them. That was so much fun. I miss those days. Life was real simple. We lived in a simple cabin, and the only source of heat was a wood stove. So I had to maintain that 24/7, get up in the middle of the night, and we had a big 3-gallon pot on the stove to keep warm water. Had gray water under the kitchen sink to dump it, and so I had to dump that. And then the honey bucket, don't let it get too full. You take it outside, and you have these cardboard boxes, and you dump it in there, tie it up, and it freezes into square cubes. And then when you get a load full, you haul it to the dump. And so that was a little bit of the practical part of living in the bush of Alaska. It's like going back, but that was a daily lifestyle. I had about 4 or 5 jugs, 6-gallon jugs, and I'd go uptown to get our water that we use for everything. So you learn to be very conservative on your use of water.
They had a water treatment building.
Yeah.
You could do laundry in there
And
get clean water.
Oh, how did you do laundry?
I had a little Hoover washing machine that I could put 2 pairs of jeans in at a time, and it would wash that. And then I had a spin that you could spin them, and then I would hang. I had clotheslines all over my living room, and would hang the clothes up and dry them. But after I had Marky, there was a lady in town. I forget her name. She ran the post office. She did my laundry for me for several months because it was pretty overwhelming with a newborn. But she would wash them. She had a washing machine, and we had this big laundry bag, and she would wash my clothes, bring them back, and I would hang them in our living room to dry.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy. So what did you do to entertain 4 kids when you had to stay inside most of the time?
I was in the cabin most of the time.
Right. How do you let
you
your kids
kidding?
run out?
Pregnant with 3 babies.
I had a dear friend before we left for Alaska. She bought us a TV VCR combo. Plus she bought us a bunch of videos, children like Cinderella and Jungle Book and a bunch of those. Bambi, I think was one. And
shout out to Disney.
Yeah, shout out to Disney. And you guys watched those? I had cassette tapes with the ABC songs on it, and so
I remember that.
you guys would
The books that go along with it.
And I would sit on the couch with you guys, and we would do crafts together. We would color, read books.
Maybe that's why God gave you 3 girls first.
Yes, definitely.
Seal has a lollipop stuck to his head.
And when she says read books, we're talking about hundreds of books.
So what did you guys do for fun outside of the house? I guess that would be more you.
Yeah.
What did you do for fun, Dad?
I was just living and going hunting and cutting firewood was fun, but we had home fellowships, a group of us Christian couples, all of us had kids, and we would load up our things in the summer. We'd get in our boats and we'd go to a summer camp. I remember you were wearing a diaper in we found a sand dunes up river, and we'd play. It's big enough to do a volleyball game there, and you and some other Eskimo babies were playing in the water off the side of the river, and your diaper was about to fall off because it was completely
absorbed all the
those
water.
Huggies was maxed out, But those were great. We'd bring a guitar, we'd sing choruses by the river, and we just had a blast. I mean, and we do that in the winter, my snowmobile to a hunting cabin the same way. And so you imagine packing maybe 30 people, kids and everybody in one room cabin, all sleeping together in one room. It was so much
And this
fun.
was for camp.
No, this was just for fun.
Just
We got to go out.
Yeah, we just go up.
Just for fun.
But I think probably the most fun thing was our Friday night fellowships. It was
Good to just hang out.
Yeah, and we would worship together, and there'd be a Bible study or something. But just because of the extreme environment, you just become so close.
Yeah.
Because you need each other
Yeah.
for that kind of life.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'll have to say, 25 years later, we could pick up where we left off with all those couples. It's just such kindred spirits that most of them stayed in Alaska and have lived there these last 20-some years. And we have been down here in South Carolina, but just nothing like that kind of fellowship, living together, knowing each other.
Actually, just I think it was last year, Isabel called me. I haven't talked to her in years. And she called me because the Lord had given her a verse for me. I was going through a difficult time. Nobody knew it. I didn't tell people. But she called me right when I needed it. And it was the verses in Isaiah, and it talks about your children having an inheritance. You know, that they are your inheritance.
Yeah.
Anyway, it just was
Right on
perfect.
time.
And the Lord had one of my dearest friends in Noorvik, Alaska, wake up and say, "You need to call Renee and give her this verse."
Wow. Yeah,
She called me
lifelong
out of the
friends.
blue, and
Wow.
you know, the timing was
Yeah.
such a God thing.
Renee, you said something really neat. You said earlier about the community. Like, I didn't think about it till now, but when there's nowhere else to go, you're in a way you're forced to grow together as a family.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, like, how much of that we lose today, because we in a lot of churches, if you work at a church or you're a part of a church, they talk about community and coming together. But you guys literally, I mean, it was a small town. There was nothing else, and you guys ate together and played together,
Yeah.
worship together.
You don't get to pick and choose.
You don't
who
get to pick and
hang out.
and you just live life together. You're around each other, for lack of better ways of saying it, 24/7. And I was just thinking, wow, of course, that's why it would bring you guys so close, and we've lost that.
I think that's probably the thing that I miss the most about Alaska. The weather, the darkness,
Right,
that was a lot. But I miss that close knit, and I think maybe that's the reason we've struggled so much in finding a community, because I think subconsciously we're looking and searching for that. What we had there,
So unique.
so unique.
Yeah.
And just that close knit community, and it's hard to find down here.
For how many years?
In Noorvik, we were there 2 years,
2
and
years.
then we lived 3 in Kotzebue.
And
Wow.
a lot has changed with the technology and cell phones.
Right,
and
right.
RatNet in Alaska set up everybody 20, 30 years ago, where they all had TV, and that changed the culture and so forth. But in those days, and thinking back, and a lot of you that are watching this will remember this, in every cabin in a village of 600 people in Noorvik, on the refrigerator was a CB radio that was stayed on 24/7, and it never went off.
Yeah.
And we spoke to the community about life.
You could
So
hear
you had to be very
everybody
careful
talk.
what you said, because it wasn't just to your group, your families, your friends, even the church. It was everybody. We were one community, and we communicated that way, and that was kind of a cool thing.
That's interesting.
And so Renee might share one thing about Don Sheldon, who was one of our dearest friends.
So Don, he's very quiet, and he is like, now he's a big time. He's a big guy.
Elder pastor.
Hi.
Hi, Don.
Hi, Don.
But I would tease him because he's very quiet. Is not very unassuming, just very quiet. So I would pick at him, and I got to where I called him Donnie. Well, one day he worked for Nana in Noorvik, and he made an announcement on the CB radio, and I'm not thinking, this goes over the whole village. So I get on there and I said, "Hey, Donnie," like that, and CB land goes deathly quiet, and I went, "Oh dear." Whoopsies.
Oh,
He didn't
my
respond.
goodness.
Nobody said anything until
Wow.
later.
Hey, Donnie, what's going on?
Oh, man, you
Poor
must
guy.
have felt so
I'm sure
embarrassed.
his face went bright red, like, Renee.
That's
Something we didn't say
funny.
was my mom was. How old were you?
I was 23 when we moved in.
23 years old with 4 babies.
Wow.
I was
Or almost
24
4.
when I
24
had
with
Marky.
4.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and my dad is 8.5 years older than my mom.
He's a little over 9 years older.
Yeah.
He's 9 years and 2 months older than me.
Oh, 9 years. Sorry. So why don't you tell us about ministry in Alaska, which is why you guys moved there. We were missionaries in Alaska. So tell us a little bit about ministry.
our purpose in being there, we were sent out to Alaskan Yearly Meeting, which is the Friends denomination. 100 plus years ago, all Christian churches were established. The early missionaries established Christianity among the Inupiat Eskimo. Wonderful story I don't have time to go into. So in all the villages, there's one primary church. That's the Friends churches, and it serves all the Inupiat Eskimo in northwest Alaska. And they wanted a Bible school started again, which had been done in a generation before, but they didn't let go, and they needed a new generation of leaders. So we had a small part in getting that going again, and so that was why we were there. So we started in Noorvik because it was a central village geographically, but we moved it back to Kotzebue because it was the hub village, the larger village, around several thousand Eskimos, and everybody came in and out of Kotzebue anyway to get their groceries and whatever. We'd make trips from the village by snowmobile or airplane into Kotzebue. It was like a hub village.
Now, how did you get connected there in the first place? Like, how did you hear about Alaska all the way from South Carolina? Or where were you guys before Alaska?
My brother,
Indiana.
Harvey Fisco, which everybody knows of the Evangelical Covenant Church out of now. It's been there for over 40 years. But in those days, he was the director of polar evangelism, and we were a sub-mission organization. Evangelical went out of Fairbanks. And so we were referred from them to this native church.
Okay. Yeah, because that is a far ways away from Indiana. So.
Anyway, so it was a small budget. They gave us a cabin, a snowmobile, and we moved in. We didn't have but a few $100s in mission support. I went to 60 churches and spent 6 months and finally said, hey, I'm just going.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we can't take care of you if you do it on your own. I said, okay. And by faith, we did that. And it was pretty simple. We had anywhere from a half dozen, more or less, students that we were there from freeze up in the fall to spring break up. Excuse me. And we set a 3-year revolving curriculum similar to what YWAM may have done years ago, where you could jump on the wheel and run it for 3 years. And we basically went through the courses and equipping people for basic ministry and Bible school. So, Old New Testament survey and just a lot of courses in ministry I won't get into. But, that was it. It was pretty simple and wonderful years. Yeah, we developed some wonderful relationships with some of the younger couples now that are elders today that are still there.
Yeah. So what was the spiritual climate like when we moved to the bush of Alaska in those different parts? I know, I have a couple stories in mind of, spiritual things that happened, but can you guys tell us a little bit about what it was like spiritually when you moved there?
There is a good, solid base of believers there, but it's a very spiritual. And by spiritual, I don't necessarily mean Christian. There's a darkness there. It's like you are hit with, down in the lower 48, at least on the East Coast, there's a lot of religion, and everybody's a Christian. And it's like that the unseen world is kind of covers itself up, doesn't allow people to see what's really going on. It's like, I don't know how to express it. And when you go into the bush, it's like all of a sudden the spirit realm hits you in the face. It's alive and active.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, being thrown into that culture that is very, they have a lot of superstitions, and those who aren't believers have carryovers, superstitious stuff. And so they know that the spirit realm is very much real.
Yeah.
And being thrown into that, it was like things are active and you see it for the first time, like you're slammed in the face with supernatural stuff. And that was very eye-opening, and it causes you to go deeper in the Lord, because you have to learn how to guard yourself, but also how to have victory when the enemy
Yeah.
comes in.
Rodney Jones, one of my students, he said in the first winter I was there, he was living in a cabin where his wife Teresa and kids were living in another village there for a short time, and he lived in a cabin by himself out of town. And he asked me if I'd go home with him. I said, why? He said, well, I have these dark figures keep coming into my cabin, and these shadows, and it had him terrified. And so I tried as best I could in those days to help him to learn to put on the armor and to be strong and to speak to that and to walk in faith and not be afraid of that. I think it was Flora Carter who died she was an older woman who wanted to go to Bible school, and Joe, her husband, wouldn't let her. So I had to go sit down and eat punuktuk and a lot of the native foods with him for hours to get permission to let his wife go to Bible school. She couldn't hardly read, and in the years that followed, she learned to read with audio Bible, the Nelson Bible, and send cassette tapes home with my students and taught them how to read their Bibles. But as I taught Flora some of the spiritual warfare, she just rose up to be a giant. She was so strong and powerful that whenever she was at home and there were other manifestations of people who were demonically possessed and so strong, one young man that 3 or 4 men couldn't hold him down. Flora walked in the middle of that, and she just spoke to it and brought things under line in a way that was so powerfully demonstrated. I was so proud of her.
Yeah.
But we could tell a lot of stories. I don't know if we have time for it, but in the years that followed and traveling into the bush in different places,
We learned a lot.
we learned a lot, and we have our roots in that. Because one of my students, Rodney Jones, had a fear of seeing shadows and things in a cabin he was staying in by himself in those days, and he asked me to go with him, so I'd walk in the dark. It was dark in the winter anyway, and to that one particular cabin out of town, and taught him how to pray and how to put on his armor and be strong and take authority over those spirits that are so afraid. The older elders that ruled in the villages were the shamans, and they moved in a very powerful thing. And even some of the friends there told us to be careful about even going around the graveyards of the old shamans, to stay away from that. So there was that level of darkness, and we were and yet the Christians, some of them that were Christians, were really strong in the Lord, of the Inupiat people there in Alaskan. So we were growing ourselves. We were learning so much. I shared a little bit about Flora Carter and her learning to be strong in the Lord, and in her second year in warfare, it's like a light went off in her head, and she began to just take that home. And in several accounts, when there was one young man that was just demonically possessed and was showing such strength that they couldn't hold him down. He was literally busting a wall, and she walked into there and just spoke with authority to that and took authority over it without having to manhandle it physically. And that was a powerful demonstration. Maybe some people there in Noorvik would remember that situation. With a lot of stories traveling in the years that followed, there were that taught us to be strong in the Lord, to put on the armor, and to not be afraid. Because there's no fear. And
what would you say is your favorite memory looking back, whether it's ministry or just fun?
After being in Alaska for a year, I was an official resident. And one of our friends, Bill Zabel, let me put my four-wheeler in his. We put our four-wheelers in his boat. So we had I think it was 3 four-wheelers, Jim Barefoot's, Bill Zabel's, and mine. And we went upriver, and we went off, and the snow was flying, and we took off with our rifles across our back. And we're going across the tundra, and you see the Purcell Mountain Range to the north, and the caribou herds were coming through, 25, 50 in a group, and you got these bulls with these double racks and shovels, and we were hunting, and I got separated from Mike and Bill, who was hunting, and it was my first winter, and I couldn't wait to kill my first caribou legally, And so I had a 30-06 with a 120 gram load. And you guys would know what I'm talking about. I was ready for a grizzly bear to knock him down, or a big bull moose chasing me. And here was this nice bull, and behind it was a small one. And when I went to shoot, I'm on my four-wheel, and I'd stop and get the shot free-handed, and I missed the big one and got the small one in the leg. And as they ran off, I went across and caught the small one, and I shot him. And when I shot him in the head. And it about blowed his head off. I mean, and
because he was so little.
Because I was shooting him with such a big. I could have killed him with the 22.
It was an adult.
223.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Okay. So embarrassing part for guys that would know was just a little overkill there. And then when Mike and Bill got back, I'm decapitating it real quick and getting it out real quick before the guys got back. We throw 3 or 4 carcasses on our four-wheeler, and I had so many coming back to the boat that winter that on that hunt that I was dragging one because I didn't have room to put it on the four-wheeler. And we drag them back to the boat. We got them out and drag them back, and that was one little fun story. Just as a rookie, newbie, greenhorn.
The spring that we all went up to Don and Heidi's cabin, that there was probably 20 or 30 people. We took all the family, all the kids, and it was springtime.
A cabin on the river.
Was that their hunting
summer
cabin?
And winter hunting camp.
Yeah.
All the natives would have their own fish camps.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. So it was, we were spending the night and we're going back the next day. So we stayed up playing games, and we stayed up late. And finally, we just all slept, like all of us slept on the floor. Families just laid out everywhere, all over the floor, and they had a bed in there. And Mike Zabel got the couch. He was single back then. Later, he married Leslie, one of the sweetest, dearest friends. And so anyway, Mike is laying on the couch, and he is still asleep when the rest of us get up. And Heidi's and Beverly they're preparing breakfast, and I'm over there in and out of the kitchen. But Mike is just sacked out on the couch, and his mouth is open. He's going, and Mark, part of what the food that we brought was Mark's mom's homemade sauerkraut. Okay.
Zabel is German.
Mike's a German, you'd think he would love sauerkraut. And so I sneak over and I pinch some. I get a pinch of some, and Mike just sound asleep, and I drop it into his mouth and shove it. He comes up spitting and saying, "What the? Did you put in my mouth?" He didn't.
He said something more than that.
What the poop did you put in my mouth? And I laughed so hard and he swore he was going to get me. I don't think he ever did get me back for that. But it was fun. That's one of my favorite memories.
So I have a couple memories that come to mind. The first one is we had our snow machine, and we had this flat sled or something that you put behind it. And it just had rails on the side. It was like just a flat board. I don't even know.
It was
firewood
and
stuff.
a sled.
And it just had rails on the side that you could hold on to. And it was the middle of winter, so the ocean was frozen. And so you wanted to take us out just to drive us around for fun. And so you put all of us kids on the back. Maybe you put one in front of you on the snow machine. And we all just rode with, we're just riding around. And you were just driving. You were spinning in circles. And you were just going crazy. And I fell off the back. And you didn't know. In my head, I'm sure it wasn't as big of a deal as it was in my head, but I was just a little girl, and I'm screaming, "Daddy!" Because you're just driving, and you finally heard me because I think the kids probably Hannah and Priscilla were screaming at you that I fell off, and so you're like, "Oh!" You felt so bad. You came around, and I remember you picked me up and you put me on the front. In front of you so I could drive with you. But I always remember that story because in my head I was like, he's leaving me in the middle of the ocean on this ice.
He threw me off one time too, but I was 8 months pregnant and I couldn't get up. And he did it twice. It was our first winter there. It was December, so I think we were going to a Christmas get together. It was a Friday night. We were going to play games all night. And I'm sitting behind him, and I was huge with Marky. I was so big. And I'm sitting there, and you girls were in the basket sled. And he went around a corner, and I just went bloop, bloop. I fell off, and I just sat there. I was like, oh, because that hurt, because my body and he wasn't going fast. And I got up. I slowly got up, and he said, come on, get back on. I'm going, no, I can't. I don't want to get thrown off. I was real whiny. And I said, no, I don't want to get thrown off again. I promise. I'll go slower. Please get back on. So I try to climb back on, just so awkward with that huge belly.
Oh my gosh.
And I get on, and he goes around the next it wasn't even a bad curve. There I go again. Bloop, bloop, bloop. And I'm like a beached whale, I'm like hard to get up. I have to get on my knees and stand up. And finally, I refused. I said, no, I am walking into the village. I am not I'm walking to Don and Heidi's. I am not getting back on with you.
Yeah, so I remember going.
Huskies.
Yeah, whoever that was, my parents' friends, put all of us kids in their sled, and they hooked up all their dogs. And if you've never seen like huskies that are ready to like go, what do you call it?
Mushing.
Mm-hmm. They are like the most, oh my gosh, they are like crazy. They're so full of energy. They're so ready to go. And I remember once you took off, I mean, they can go fast. They have about 8 of them, right? Mm-hmm. All hooked up. All I remember is, we have our parkas on, so all you see is little part of our face.
It was like 62 below during that time.
And pellets of snow just, it hurt so bad. Just stinging your face because we were going fast and it was snowing. And anyway, but I love thinking back. I'm like, that's so cool that we actually got to like ride. We didn't go skiing or snowboarding, but we got to ride.
Snowmobiling.
Yeah. So just to kind of like sum up, we'll tell a last few stories, but my last question is, what hidden beauty did you discover that people need to know about the people in Noorvik and Kotzebue?
They love deeply. They love to laugh. I remember hearing and the older ones love to speak in their native tongue. And I loved hearing the ladies, the older women, sit around and talk to each other in their native tongue, and they would laugh, and they have a lot of heartache, a lot of sad things that happen, but when they get together and laugh, it is beautiful. Mm. And I loved hearing that. I loved their language, listening to them talk.
I have a couple of things. One is the pastors' conference in Kotzebue. All of the pastors and their wives, we were together in a Bible school, and it was a big group of us from all of the villages. Everybody was there together. We were like one family. We were comrade in arms, and as we would sing for hours. And the Inupiat people of Northwest Alaska are an oral culture. They pass their things down by memory, and they speak and tell stories. And so there's lots of rich stories we don't have time to tell. But they would sing, and they would memorize all 5 verses of those old rich hymns. Mm-hmm. And we would sit and sing for hours and hours, of verse after verse. And it makes me want to weep when I think back of those special times when the Lord would come. We would sing those songs. Ruth and Henry Otwater, they're gone to heaven now. They were some of the old first generation people who turned to Christianity. And they were like our mother. then she gave you your
name
Eskimo name, which is
Kotzebue,
which means
stinky fishnet.
stinky fishnet.
But that's
And
not.
she would cry, "Give me stinky fishnet." But it was
I'm
a
so
wonderful
embarrassed.
compliment, and I think
Oh,
that's yet to be fulfilled prophetically.
But they would name you an Eskimo name after someone that was high honor. So to get there, it wasn't the literal meaning that was significant. It was
Also
who
the person to whom you were
after.
named after. But Ruth,
It was special.
one of the many rich lessons I got from Ruth was she said, I'm the white missionary in a Inupiat culture. I'm trying so much to eat their foods and be like them and act like them, dress like them, and be accepted in. And they're kind of funny people, you know. They would use a lot of humor with that, with us. And she said, Mark, just be yourself. And you'll find that we'll accept you much better. Stop trying to be like us.
Wow.
That's a powerful lesson as far as if you ever go to another culture, be yourself.
Yeah.
You can eat what's up before you for sure, but be yourself. And I use that, and I still carry that.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on and sharing your stories. I just have one more thing. Do you guys remember Jesus Loves Me in Inupiat?
Do you remember?
I think I remember.
I think I could
Okay.
follow you.
Jesus Naglita. Jesus Naglita. Jesus Naglita. Bible ni kotikana. That's so crazy. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and found something interesting and learned something new about Alaskan culture and in the Northwest. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys in my next video.
Oh